Army lieutenant who becomes entranced with the lifestyle of the American Indian in the epic film Dances with Wolves. It's one of the new movies we'll be reviewing this week on Siskel and Ebert, along with a review of the new Disney animated feature, The Rescuers Down Under, their first one since The Little Mermaid. I'm Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune.
And I'm Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times. While I was watching Dances with Wolves, I gradually found myself filled with the kinds of feelings that I've always gone to the movies for. This is a sweeping, beautiful, romantic, exciting, committed movie, an epic Western that takes place in 1864 when a Union soldier asked to be posted out west because he wants to see the frontier before it's all gone. The officer, played by Kevin Costner, is sent to a post where he's the only white man for miles around, and one day he surprises a Sioux Indian neighbor who's come to see what he's up to.
You there!
That's Graham Greene. A key performance in the movie is Kicking Bird, one of the leaders of the tribe. That first contact is followed by a more official meeting in which Kicking Bird brings another tribal leader, wind in his hair. The Indians try to make sense out of the soldiers' attempts to communicate.
Wait, just a minute. What's it gonna be? Here.
That's Rodney Grant as wind in his hair, and his presence is one of the anchors of this movie. Gradually, haltingly, the men make friends. And communication becomes easier when the Indians bring a white woman who has lived with them since they found her as a small child. She still remembers a little English.
I'm John Dunbar.
John Dunbar.
Dunbar.
John Dunbar.
Dances with Wolves is filled with wondrous outdoor adventure and photography like this buffalo hunt. And that magnificent scene is typical of this whole movie. Kevin Costner not only stars in Dances with Wolves, but he directed it too. And this is an enormously impressive job of filmmaking, especially for a first-time director. He seems absolutely assured throughout the epic sweep of this film, and he has the same sort of love for the Western form as the old masters like John Ford. What sets this movie apart is its respect for the Indian characters and its attention to the daily details of Sioux Indian life. Usually in traditional Westerns, the Indians are forced to speak some kind of dumb pidgin English like "me heap big Injun chief" or something. Here, it's the white men who feel the lack of language, and this is the first Western I can remember where the actual sounds of Indian speech are heard on the screen. The spirit behind that decision is one of the many reasons this is one of the year's best films.
I'm sure we're going to get people writing in that there are other films. I remember seeing, even I think in A Man Called Horse, Roger, where there were other subtitles.
Oh, that's good.
Okay. But let me say straight out, this is a great film. We had been knocking music a couple of weeks ago with Quincy Jones, too much music. The score by John Barry there is really beautiful, and that should be mentioned. But I have to give credit to Kevin Costner. I thought the tribute, the connection you were going to make was very much like the same kind of love that he had for baseball, another American tradition in Field of Dreams, is the effect for the West here, the whole horse culture, and for the American Indian. And there's a great shot, my favorite shot in the whole movie is an odd one, I think. He shows a dying Pawnee Indian. There's a confrontation between the Sioux and the Pawnee in this picture. They're not all just all good Indians. And a Pawnee brave dies with a cry. And I felt in that moment it was like I was watching a piece of great sculpture, ironwork, that this was the death cry of this whole culture. And that's what the movie is all about.
He says after that battle, he says, "For the first time I knew who I was." His Indian name is Dances with Wolves.
Yes.
He said, "I never knew who I was before, but now I know who I am because I did this in order to defend something I understand."
You talked about this being the kind of film that you go to the pictures for, this kind of experience.
Yes,
that you
it is.
And that's exactly right. This is when you just sit back. It goes 3 hours. It's not long at 3 hours. Good movies are never long.
It's a wonderful experience.
Yeah. Okay, next film, and it's the new romantic musical film from the rock star Prince. It's called Graffiti Bridge, and it's quite awful. An extended music video about a battle between two musical stars over their respective nightclubs, their approach to music, and also over a beautiful woman. Prince plays a character called the Kid, modeled after his character in his first movie, Purple Rain. Here he is performing at the club. Competing with Prince is Morris Day, also from Purple Rain. His own nightclub is Red Hot, and he is also part owner of Prince's Club. Morris Day doesn't like Prince's new musical act.
People tell me you've been making that spiritual noise again. You know, I can't make no money that way.
If you ever gave it a chance, one day you would.
That dialogue is so awkward and stilted, and the woman we saw in the reaction shot there, she has an empty role. There's a whole lot I can't believe about Graffiti Bridge. The spirituality battle is lame. Prince is not the least bit appealing when he isn't singing. And actually, in performance there, I didn't think he was particularly exciting. Morris Day isn't as funny as he was in Purple Rain. In fact, if you remember, we both liked Purple Rain so much, I now have to wonder if that film was a fluke.
Purple Rain had so much energy, so much passion, so much conviction. Those are three qualities that are lacking here.
Right.
And one thing this movie doesn't have from beginning to end is an electrifying song and dance sequence that really takes off and carries you with it. It's a real flat, low-energy film.
Prince is shot in the fog a lot of time. In fact, the whole picture is foggy. Coming up next, The Krays, a movie about the most famous and feared criminals in modern London history. And then later in the show, the new Disney animated feature, The Rescuers Down Under.
What little gentleman. You make me feel proud. The both of you. Make it all mean something.
The Kray twins were the most violent criminals in modern British history, but the strangest thing about them was their close relationship with their mother. And you saw her there, Violet, played by Billie Whitelaw, as the doting Cockney mom whose boys could do no wrong. One of the most chilling things about the new movie, The Krays, is the contrast between the violent crimes of the Krays and their desire to be treated like gentlemen. Their business in the early 60s was a simple one. They sold protection in the East End of London, and mostly it was protection against themselves. British crime was more genteel before the Krays came along. They were more on the American style, and in fact, they actually tried to set up a connection with the U.S. Mafia. They're played here by two brothers, Gary and Martin Kemp, rock stars from Spandau Ballet.
I love London. It's so wonderfully dirty. And the Beatles. I adore the Beatles. You know the Beatles?
No. I believe they know us.
They were playing in the big leagues, but they always came home to Mom for her approval, and Billie Whitelaw's performance is one of the most chilling things in the movie.
You spent your whole life lying and cheating, and what have you got to show for it? An armchair full of mothballs. Go on, I dare you. Only if you do, you better kill me while you're at it, Charlie Cray. Because I swear on my mother's life, I'll slit your throat while you're asleep.
Most true crime movies are obsessed with facts and details. The Krays is more obsessed, I think, with relationships, with the way the boys related to their parents, to a brother, and to the romantic partners that they hounded and badgered into hostility. There's no doubt about it, the Krays were sadistic and evil men, but what made them that way, and what made them so much more successful than the average East End hoodlums of their same generation? The movie seems to argue that behind every successful criminal stands a good mother.
You have a smile on your face now, and I wasn't smiling too much when I watched the picture. They were frightening. I think that what makes them dangerous, in addition to the mother, is that they were willing to get knives or swords out. I mean, that's what is shocking, is the close-in combat. It's one thing to shoot somebody from
hands-on violence. What you're talking about is that in British crime up until that point, the cops didn't carry guns, the robbers usually didn't carry guns, and people handled things more or less in a kind of like in one of those real old Jimmy Cagney dead-end kid type movies. And then suddenly along came these guys who personally would walk right up to you and cut your face open.
That was their specialty.
And they scared the other criminals off the turf.
Absolute evisceration up close. I mean, and when we see that in the picture, it's shocking. And the film, I think, and that's what I like so much about a lot of British crime stories, is it's mundane. It's very practical. They pick up a knife and they cut you up.
And there are really some good performances.
Very, very good. These guys, there was good casting.
Coming up next, the Rescue Aid Society is back in action with the Rescuers Down Under.
There has been a kidnapping, Don't ever do that to me again!
You're looking at a scene from The Rescuers Down Under. That's the latest Disney animated feature, their first since The Little Mermaid. This is more of a rousing adventure film than a sweet fable, but it's exceedingly well drawn and written, featuring the story of a boy kidnapped by an evil Australian bounty hunter.
It's all over, boy. Your bird's dead.
The bounty hunter wants to capture a rare eagle that has befriended the boy. Here's a beautifully drawn flying sequence. Out to rescue the boy are the industrious mice of the Rescue Aid Society, the timid Bernard and the strong Miss Bianca. We first met them in the 1977 animated hit, The Rescuers.
Thank you.
The adventure in this film is really quite rousing. The boy dangling over alligator-infested rapids, the eagle and its 3 eggs in danger of being attacked by a giant lizard. The poacher is a shocking villain, too. There's a hospital scene that's meant to be comedic but frightened a 4-year-old that I took to this movie. This film may be too intense, I think, for kids under 5 or 6, but for older ones, including me, I found it very exciting with a great range of emotion, from those moments of terror to the more gentle comedy involving the Rescue Aid Society, tiny little creatures. It's a very strong entertainment.
I agree with you. It's not, however, a great original leap like The Little Mermaid.
No.
It's just a real good, competent,
Yes.
well-made, exciting action animated film.
Yes, but also, in some cases, drawn in a very adventurous style.
Yes, it is. Well,
The landscape of the
couple
Australia.
of other comments I want to make. One thing I didn't like is the fact that the poacher is shown with a very dark complexion. One thing that I really have to
you know what, I
question,
thought he
why
was
do
in
they have
shadow.
to identify bad guys with people with darker complexions and good guys with people with lighter complexions?
No.
Why not just draw him
let me answer.
as another person the same color as everybody else in the movie?
Let me answer it. I think that I didn't pick up that he was dark complected. I saw that as a guy being shot in shadow, and that's the way I saw it.
I'm
sorry, that's the way I
look
saw
at
it.
it again.
No.
Another thing I didn't like is the fact the movie starts with The Prince and the Pauper, a little Mickey Mouse, longish short subject, about 22 minutes long.
Oh, if I could take your place for just one day. Yes. What a grand idea.
The movie stars Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, Pluto, and Goofy in an animated version of the old Mark Twain classic, and I thought it was a lot of fun. One thing that bothered me a little bit is, between Mickey Mouse and the Rescuers, a ticking clock comes on the screen for 10 minutes, and that's obviously to send people out to buy popcorn, and I thought that was a little bit uncalled for, even though I did enjoy both movies.
It gives them, at least the kids, a chance to go to the bathroom, also to prepare for a change in emotion, because you have a sweet little innocent Mickey Mouse show, and then a fairly intense action-adventure film.
And I'm sure that's why they put it in, and it had nothing to do with selling popcorn. Coming up next, Gene talks with Barry Levinson, director of Rain Man and Avalon, who gives us a director's view of movie critics.
Roger and I have criticized movies and their makers, and I thought it was high time a filmmaker got a chance to turn the tables on us. Recently, both Roger and I gave rave reviews to Barry Levinson's new movie, Avalon, the personal story of his immigrant parents and grandparents, but that didn't stop Levinson from taking the bait when I asked him to find fault with movie critics in general. When you either watch film critics discuss your work or the work of others or read criticism, are there some times when you say, boy, they got that all wrong?
The hardest one would be is where they would assume who did what. Probably most common. It's hard, what happens is sometimes we credit the cinematographer, sometimes we credit the director. Sometimes it's very hard to be specific as to who did what. Or in terms of the writer, because the writer may have written it.
With his last movie, Rain Man, Levinson said he was disappointed with Dustin Hoffman getting more praise than Tom Cruise. He thinks critics may have been thinking more about Cruise's character rather than his performance.
Who's your mother? Eleanor Babbitt. Eleanor? Died January 5th, 1965 after a short...
Who the hell are you?
Uh-oh.
Well, Tom, I don't think got the credit that he should have gotten, because he has to drive the movie. He has to push that film at all times. He has to instigate everything that happens, because Raymond doesn't instigate it on his own. Sometimes the degree of difficulty for a performance may be much greater, and an actor will never get the credit because that character is not all that wonderful.
In addition to that, Levinson believes that most critics review the movie they would like to see made more than the one the director has made.
You got the name. Wichinsky. It's the name.
You're getting reviews of Avalon now, and what do you, as you look at them, what do you secretly say about the critics?
They want the movie to be their own view of it. So you can say, well, the immigrant experience, or what happens to the struggle of the immigrants. The immigrant struggled, and yes, they did, but this story is not dealing with the immigrant struggle. It is really dealing with the next generation story.
Worse than that, according to Levinson, is the critic who he believes has a personal vendetta against the director. That's what he thought was going on with the fine critic Pauline Kael. in her harsh treatment of his film Tin Men, which was about aluminum siding salesmen in Baltimore.
Tell me, where's it written in the Constitution where it says a man can't hustle for money? Huh? Where's it written?
The entire review was how the Tin Men should not be called Tin Men, they're Shingle Men. And this whole review went on about the Shingle Men. Now, there may be Shingle Men, I'm not familiar with them. This is the story of Baltimore aluminum siding salesmen who were Tin Men. This person kept talking about Shingle Men. Now, there's an arrogance to that.
The things you seem to be saying about critics are they can't tell who did what and who deserves credit for what, and they try to put their story, have the movie be their story rather than the story that's being told. Those things are pretty serious charges which would tend to invalidate criticism almost in every facet. You want to stand by that?
I think, yes. I think what happens is, look, it's an imperfect system. I mean, criticism is imperfect by the nature of the fact that it's criticism. If you really want to do valid criticism, I don't think you can necessarily watch it just like you watch some kind of, popcorn piece. You may have to watch it a second time if you really want to get into the criticism of the movie, because some of them are so filled with so many ideas that you can't really do a valid criticism on it.
His last suggestion about seeing a picture more than once, I find myself acting on when I think the picture has some value. This past summer, I saw more pictures a second time, once even a third time, before reviewing them, when they're worth it.
Yeah, most of the time, though, you have to agree, like maybe 98% of the time, we only get a chance to see a movie once before it's reviewed, and that's true with all critics. And after all, people who go to the movies basically only go to see it once. So maybe the review should be based on a single viewing.
Well, it doesn't hurt if there's something there to see a second time, to pick up nuance. Goodfellas, Scorsese's film, saw that twice before.
Yeah, well, there are pictures I've seen 50 or 60 times, but the point is that in general what he's talking about exists in a utopia, because most studios do not make pictures available to be seen more than once, and the reviews have to appear on opening day, so what are you going to do?
What about some of his other criticisms?
One thing that he's right about is that critics in general do not know where to place the credit or blame. Was it the director, the cinematographer? Was it the writer? Was it the actor? That's true. He's probably true about Rain Man, that Tom Cruise's performance was underrated.
The one method that I use is when an actor has been unimpressive for a long period of time and then suddenly is, I think it's the director that used him in a proper way.
Maybe it was a bad director all the other times.
No.
When we come back, one of the most charming movies of 1980 contains a performance by a teenager who grew up to be one of the top stars of 1990. Do you recognize her? I rediscovered a movie I was charmed by way back in 1980, a low-budget musical called Junior High School that uses song and dance to tell the story of the traumas of those in-between years. This little movie is funny and charming from beginning to end, but when I liked it so much 10 years ago, little did I know that one of its young stars would turn into a superstar. Can you recognize her here at the age of 14?
What would you do if David kissed you? I just thought, so would I.
That is Paula Abdul showing some of the same talent that later made her famous. But I'm not recommending Junior High School simply because it contains an early performance by Paula Abdul. I like it because it's a really entertaining short subject, 45 minutes long. And Paula Abdul sure looks different today than she did then. The movie is available, by the way, in at least one national chain of video stores. And now let's take another look at the movies we reviewed on the show. Two very enthusiastic thumbs up for Kevin Costner's magnificent and visionary Dances with Wolves. Two thumbs down, though, for the disappointing, lackluster Prince musical, Graffiti Bridge. Two thumbs up for the Krays, the British crime movie that brings violence home in a very immediate way. And finally, two more thumbs up for the exciting and entertaining animated feature, The Rescuers Down Under. And so, of course, the real discovery this week is Dances with Wolves, which is certainly Academy Award material.
They thought the Western was dead. If you make it with a lot of heart, it can work. It's a great film. That's it for this week. Next, we'll be back with Rocky V, starring Sylvester Stallone, and also the comedy Home Alone, starring Joe Pesci and Daniel Stern, being terrorized by little Macaulay Culkin. That's next week.